My hand froze on the doorknob the second I heard my father's voice coming from his study. I wasn't supposed to be there. I had only driven over to drop off wedding invitation samples. Ivory cardstock with gold trim, something I'd spent weeks choosing, because I wanted everything to be perfect. The plan was simple. Leave them on the kitchen counter, say hello if needed, and head straight back to work. 5 minutes. In and out. But something in his tone made my stomach tighten. $75,000, Alex, my father said. And the VP position I promised you. That's more than generous. My breath caught. Alex, my boyfriend of 3 years, the man I slept next to every night, the man who had helped pick those wedding invitations, the man I was supposed to marry in 6 months. I know it's a lot to ask, my father continued, lowering his voice slightly, but Jessica needs this. After the divorce, she's struggling. She needs someone stable, someone practical. You two would be perfect together, Jessica. My cousin. The golden child. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart pounding so loudly it felt like it might give me away. My palms were damp, my knees weak, every instinct screaming that I shouldn't be hearing this, that once you hear something like this, you can't unhear it. Emma will understand, my father said calmly, like this was already settled. She's always been the understanding one. Too soft, really. She'd be fine. She always lands on her feet. Too soft. She'd be fine. The words didn't just hurt. They rewrote something inside me. Years of being patient, agreeable, easy to overlook, suddenly snapped into focus. Give it 2 weeks, he added. End things smoothly. Make it seem natural. I'll have the money transferred right after. 2 weeks. My future reduced to a timeline. I didn't wait to hear Alex respond. I already knew he wouldn't say no. I stepped away from the door, walked out of the house as quietly as I'd entered, and sat in my car with my hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock my phone. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get enough air. That's when I remembered the shared iPad. The one Alex used sometimes. The one he forgot to clear his messages from. I opened the thread. There it was. Deal. That give me time to end things smoothly. 2 weeks. My vision blurred. He had already agreed. Already chosen money, status, approval over me. I sat in my father's driveway for 20 minutes, crying until my face hurt, until my throat burned, until something deeper than sadness settled in. This wasn't just betrayal. This was confirmation. Jessica needed saving, and I was the acceptable sacrifice. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel soft. I felt awake. That night, I didn't say a word. Alex came home like nothing was wrong. He kissed my cheek, asked about my day, complained about traffic, like he hadn't just agreed to trade our future for money and a title. I watched him move around our apartment, comfortable, relaxed, already halfway gone. I lay awake beside him, long after he fell asleep, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the last 3 years. Every compromise I'd made. Every time I'd swallowed my feelings to keep the peace. Every moment, I told myself that being understanding was the same thing as being loved. Sometime after midnight, I got out of bed and opened my laptop. Buried in my inbox was an email I hadn't opened in months. A job offer from Toronto. Senior marketing manager. Better pay. Bigger responsibility. A chance to build something on my own. I had turned it down because Alex couldn't leave his job, because my father said moving away from family was irresponsible, because I'd been taught that wanting more made me difficult. That night, it finally hit me. I had already been abandoned. Alex just hadn't said the words yet. The next morning, while he was in the shower, I stepped onto the balcony and made the call. My hands were shaking. My voice nearly broke, but the moment they said the position was still open, something in my chest loosened. They wanted me to start in 3 weeks. I said yes. For the next 2 weeks, I watched Alex perform. Flowers on Friday. Dinner at my favorite restaurant. Holding me at night. Whispering about our future. All while quietly counting down to the moment he could leave without looking, like the villain. I played along. Not because I believed in him anymore, but because I needed time. Time to pack my life into boxes. Time to resign from my job. Time to find an apartment in a city I barely knew. On the 13th day, I came home early from work. Everything I cared about was already in storage. My flight to Toronto was booked for the next morning. Alex was sitting on the couch when I walked in, phone in hand. "We need to talk," he said, his face already arranged into regret. "I'm leaving," I said calmly. I slipped the engagement ring off my finger, the one that had belonged to his grandmother, and placed it on the table between us. "I know about the money," I said. "I hope it was worth it." The color drained from his face. "Emma, I can explain." "Don't," I said quietly. "I'm done." I picked up my purse, the only thing I was taking from that apartment, and walked out without looking back. And for the first time since I'd overheard that phone call, I felt something close to control. On the plane to Toronto the next morning, I finally let myself fall apart. I cried quietly into my sleeve, staring out the window as the city I thought was my future disappeared beneath the clouds. I cried for the relationship I believed in, for the wedding that would never happen, for the version of myself who thought love meant being patient, flexible, endlessly understanding. I cried for my father too, for the way he had always measured my worth against someone else's needs, for how easily he'd decided I was the one who could be sacrificed. But somewhere between takeoff and cruising altitude, the tears slowed, and something else took their place. Clarity. Toronto welcomed me with cold rain and grey skies, a tiny apartment with thin walls, and the sharp feeling of starting over at 30. 2 weeks later, the world shut down. Offices closed. Streets emptied. The pandemic hit, and suddenly I was alone in a city where I knew no one, cut off from distractions, forced to sit with my thoughts. So I worked. Not casually, not politely. I worked like someone who had something to prove, even if I wasn't sure who I was proving it to. 60-hour weeks turned into 70. I volunteered for projects no one wanted. I learned systems I wasn't hired to manage. I memorized strategies, studied competitors, stayed late on video calls until my eyes burned. When layoffs came, I made myself impossible to ignore. The promotion came quickly. The confidence did not. I called my therapist every Thursday at 3, unpacking years of being second choice, of shrinking myself to stay loved. She reminded me, again and again, that my father's opinion wasn't truth. It was limitation. I didn't believe her at first. But slowly something shifted. My mother called one Sunday and told me she had left my father. She said she couldn't stay with a man who would treat his own daughter as disposable. Her voice shook when she told me she was proud of me, and that she wished she'd been braver sooner. I blocked everyone else. In 2021, the world began to open again, and so did I. I joined a yoga class, made friends, learned how to take up space without apologizing for it. I started laughing again, not the careful kind, but the real kind. Then I met David. No grand gestures, no emotional chaos, just calm, steady attention. He listened. He never rushed me. He never made me feel like love had conditions. By 31, I was promoted to Vice President of Marketing. I led teams. I signed offers. I made decisions without asking permission. And for the first time in my life, success didn't feel like revenge. It felt like alignment. But part of me still wondered, quietly, how it would feel to face the people who once decided I wasn't enough. By the time my brother's wedding invitation arrived, 3 years had passed. 3 years since, I'd walked out of my old life with one suitcase and a broken heart. 3 years of building something solid from nothing. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it, already knowing what it would bring back with it. The past. My brother called the same night. He said he wanted me there. That Mom wanted me there. That I didn't have to talk to Dad if I didn't want to. He promised to stand between us if he had to. I told him I'd think about it. David didn't push. He never did. He just asked one question that stayed with me for days. What would it mean to you if you went? The answer surprised me. It would mean they no longer scared me. So I said yes. We flew in 2 days early. My mother met us at the airport and hugged me like she was afraid I'd disappear again. She kept looking at me, like she was memorizing the woman I'd become. When she whispered, "You look happy," I realized she was right. The rehearsal dinner was where everything tightened. The room was familiar in the way old scars are familiar. I felt my father before I saw him. Older. Smaller somehow. Watching me like he wasn't sure he was allowed to. And then there were Jessica and Alex. They sat together but didn't touch. Jessica looked exhausted. Alex looked hollow. They saw me at the same time. Jessica froze. Alex went pale. I lifted my glass, smiled politely, and turned back to my life. And that was the moment everything shifted. Because I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pain. I felt finished. The wedding itself was beautiful. Sunlight, laughter, vows that meant something. I danced with my brother, with my mother, with David. I wore a dress that made me feel powerful, not decorative. At the reception, my father finally approached me. He apologized. Said what he did was wrong. Said he'd thought he was helping Jessica. Said he hadn't realized the damage. I listened calmly. Then I told him the truth. That forgiveness didn't mean access. That I had already moved on. That he hadn't ruined my life, he'd freed it. Behind me, David stepped outside, sensing the moment without interrupting it. When I introduced him as my fiancé, my father's face changed. Surprise. Regret. Something like grief. Jessica found me later. She said she hadn't known. That she was sorry. That the marriage had already ended. I believed her. And for the first time, I felt compassion instead of comparison. The next morning, flying back to Toronto, I felt light. Not because they'd seen me succeed, but because I no longer needed them to. 3 months after the wedding, an unknown number texted me. I almost deleted it without opening it. Old habits die hard. That something made me pause. It was my father. He said he'd seen my LinkedIn post about the company IPO. Said he was proud of me. Said he knew he didn't have the right to say that anymore, but he needed me to know he'd been wrong. That I was never too soft. That I had always been strong. He just hadn't seen it. I read the message twice. Then I deleted it. Not out of anger, not out of bitterness, but because I didn't need it anymore. His approval had lost its power over me. David and I got married the following spring in Toronto. It was small, intentional, and deeply ours. My mother stood beside me, smiling through tears. My brother was there, laughing, steady as always. There was no tension, no fear, no pretending. I didn't invite my father, not as punishment, as a boundary. I sent him a wedding announcement instead. A card. No date, no location, no invitation. He sent back a check for $50,000. I didn't cash it. I framed it. It hangs in my office now, a reminder that my worth was never something that could be purchased, negotiated, or traded away. A reminder that love offered with conditions isn't love at all. Sometimes, late at night, David finds me scrolling through old photos on my phone. Pictures of the woman I used to be. The one who smiled smaller, apologized faster, took up less space. Do you miss her? He asks. I always shake my head. I miss who I thought I was. I tell him. But I don't miss being her. The truth is, my father did me the biggest favor of my life when he paid Alex to leave me. He exposed the truth before I made the biggest mistake of my life. He forced me to stop bending myself into shapes that made others comfortable and start building something that made me whole. I stopped trying to be chosen, and I chose myself. I built a life where love isn't conditional, where success isn't borrowed, where I'm not too soft or too much or not enough. I'm exactly right. The best revenge wasn't confrontation. It wasn't anger. It wasn't proving anything to anyone. It was building something so full, so beautiful, so aligned with who I truly am, that the people who once underestimated me simply don't fit in it anymore. And that life? It's extraordinary.